Greenpeace is a non-governmental organisation that runs in over 40 countries worldwide and is funded solely by donations from small parties, fundraisers and individuals. Greenpeace sets out to restore and protect the beautiful oceans, forests, landscapes and world that we live in. Greenpeace can be said to have begun in 1970 when the Don't Make a Wave Committee was established by Dorothy and Irving Stowe, Marie and Jim Boland, Ben and Dorothy Metcalf and Bob Hunter. The sole objective of this committee was to stop a second nuclear weapons test at Amchita Island in the Aleutians. Greenpeace stands by a selection of core goals and principles. These are to bear witness to environmental destruction in a peaceful and non-violent manner, to use non-violent confrontation to raise the level and quality of public debate, to expose threats to the environment and together explore possible solutions. To ensure financial independence, therefore conserve the ability to stay independent and focus on real issues that affect the environment rather than gloss over hard issues due to government funding and therefore censorship. And lastly, to seek solutions and promote open and informed debate on environmental issues in today's society.
Greenpeace has taken several actions to contribute to finding a solution to many of the problems the world faces with the rapidly changing conditions of climate change. Some of Greenpeace's success stories include stopping a cargo ship filled with 26 highly enriched uranium elements from a nuclear power station in Germany. The cargoes were to be shipped via Liverpool for treatment at the nuclear processing plant at Dorrier in Scotland. They only got as far as Holland, as international law demands that such cargoes be carried in purpose-built vessels. Catching and stopping Shell Corporation after hearing of the company's plans to dump the Brent Spar, a redundant oil platform at sea. Consequently, in 1994, Greenpeace's toxic trade team succeeded with the Bay Sea Convention, an agreement by 65 countries to restrict exports of hazardous waste from rich to poor countries. Urging LEGO to stop its partnership with Shell, Shell had oil service stations selling promotional LEGO sets, complete with Shell gas pumps, fancy cars, and assorted signs and features. Greenpeace opposed Shell and its disgraceful plans to drill the Arctic for petrol and other evil actions that are damaging the environment. As a result of LEGO ending its partnership with Shell, the LEGO products no longer glorify Shell and their actions. Back in the 80s, Greenpeace campaigned worldwide for an instant global ban on the further making and use of ozone-destroying substances such as CFCs and HCFCs. Refrigerators were one of the biggest cause of destruction to ozone substances. To solve this issue, we decided to create a refrigerator that was less harmful to ozone. This was when the Green Freeze refrigerator was invented, through much experimentation. Today, all major manufacturers produce Green Freeze refrigerators. Every human is affected by climate change, from hazardous effects causing potential loss of life, injury, or other negative health impacts, to the potential exposure of social, economic, and infrastructure assets to adverse impacts. There are many risks that affect humans, such as death, injury, ill health, or disrupted livelihoods in low-lying coastal zones and small island developing states and other small islands due to storm surges, coastal flooding, and sea level rise leading to flooding and loss of homes. Risk of severe ill health and disrupted livelihoods for large urban populations due to inland flooding in some regions. Systematic risks due to extreme weather events leading to breakdown of infrastructure, networks, and critical services such as electricity, water supply, and health and emergency services. Risk of food insecurity and the breakdown of food systems linked to warming, drought, flooding, and precipitation, variability, and extremes, particularly for poorer populations in urban and rural settings. Risk of loss of rural livelihoods and income due to insufficient access to clean drinking and irrigated water and reduced agriculture productivity. Risk of loss of marine and coastal ecosystems, biodiversity, and the ecosystem goods, functions, and services they provide for coastal livelihoods, especially for fishing communities in the tropics and the Arctic.
As mentioned, Greenpeace is a completely independent organisation that receives no help from the government or big corporations, and its set principles make sure that it will continue to run as such. Greenpeace has employees over the world, but to focus on Australia, CEO of Greenpeace is David Ritter. Ritter became CEO of Greenpeace Australia Pacific in 2012 after working in London also with Greenpeace, where he worked for 5 years on the global issues of destructive fishing, deforestation and climate change. Other employment roles include Oceans Team Leader, Head of Mobilisation, Oceans Campaigner and Climate and Energy Campaigner, as well as other minor, however very important roles. Greenpeace is also home to many volunteers of which anyone can apply to help in Greenpeace's mission to protect and conserve the beautiful environment that we live in.
Greenpeace is constrained in its response to climate change environmentally due to the fact that humans are burning fossil fuel at an extremely high rate. Ken Whalen says in the Encyclopedia of Global Warming and Climate Change that if this continues, it will eventually have catastrophic events on existing ecosystems, natural landscapes, plant and animal populations, and human life. A political constraint faced by Greenpeace is that the governments all over the world have all the power, responsibility, and the final say when it comes to climate change. Unfortunately, they are the ones that the most people will listen to and trust. Greenpeace International needs the governments to understand the severity of climate change and what needs to be done to combat it. Without the government's support, Greenpeace will not be able to achieve its goal. The media constrains Greenpeace from publicising the effects of climate change due to the fact that their greatest advertising revenue supports the very things that are affecting climate change, including cars, fast food and more. Kevin Michael DeLuca is the Senior Media Analyst at Greenpeace International and also a professor at the University of Utah. Due to these things being the media's greatest advertising revenue, DeLuca states that the commercial media are in a compromised position. Energy companies are not speaking the truth when it comes to the renewable energy topic in Australia. This holds Greenpeace back from achieving its goals of clean energy due to the public not getting all of the facts. Greenpeace is constrained economically due to the fact that it is an independent campaigning organisation. Being an independent organisation means that they do not have large funds behind them and everything they do is funded by themselves. This is a large economic constraint for the organisation and how they can help combat climate change.
This year, on Earth Day, April 22nd, more than 165 countries signed a global agreement, the Paris Climate Agreement. This agreement was established to protect our environment. This was the highest amount of countries for an international agreement, which was a very encouraging sign. The world is finally coming together to confront climate change, the most urgent issue of our time. The countries most affected by climate change stood together and demanded that global warming be limited compared to pre-industrial times. The limit agreed upon was an increase of 0.5 degrees, which we must not exceed for the sake of countries in the Pacific and poorer developing countries. Progressive businesses, meanwhile, showed that a renewable future is possible by committing to use only 100% renewable energies themselves. We are working hard to further reduce coal consumption in China. We are fighting to save the Amazon rainforest for its peoples and to protect the Arctic, our vital global refrigerator.